Hello, I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this word in your ear, the latest of hundreds of chats Mark, Ellen and I have had over recent years, some between ourselves and others with musicians, authors, comedians, and other people we like. If you'd like to help make sure they continue, you might consider being a Patreon supporter by visiting patreon.com/wordinyourear, or just by liking or subscribing in whatever way you prefer. On with the show.
Word down your way. You're such a lovely audience.
Welcome to another Word Down Your Way, wherein we talk to people who are about to come amongst you in the next few weeks. And our special guest on this occasion is the act you've known for all these years, Hugh Cornwell. Nice to see you, Hugh.
Hello, David. Nice to be here.
Are you very much getting in tour shape at the moment? Are there routines you follow prior to a tour or not?
Yes, regular rehearsals with the guys, and we're starting that later this week, and then it will be every week regularity. I don't believe that, if you do like 10 days on the trot, one day after another, it doesn't tend to yield as good results as if you do it in bursts, and then after the rehearsal you go away and think about it, and then when you come back you find it's you've gained a lot more.
You attack it more, don't you, if you're doing short? Yeah. Well, look, what we traditionally do is we ask people if they can remember was the first time you saw a performance live on stage. It could be anything. Could be a comedian, could be a musical act, or anything. What's your memory?
Well, I mean, I've shared this with a few occasions before, and it just it sits in my mind, and it will do for the rest of my life. It's always been there. I was taken to the Rainbow in North London.
Right.
Which now doesn't exist, the Rainbow in Finsbury Park, to see Chuck Berry live on stage. I was at school with Richard Thompson, and Richard took me to see this. He said, "Do you want to go to a gig?" And I said, "Well, what's that? What's that?" So I didn't know what it was. Said, "Well, we go and see people playing, on stage." I said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." So I went along with Richard, not really knowing what to expect, and it just happened to be the most amazing synchronicity with the chart performance. So all the bands on the bill had most of them, all except one, had recent number ones. I mean, within the last few weeks of the show. So. First on was the Nashville Teens, who had just had number one with Tobacco Road. Then, and I thought, well, that was pretty good. And then the Animals came on, and they just had House of the Rising Sun. And then the Moody Blues came on, and they just had Go Now, number one. And I couldn't believe my luck. I thought, God, is it always? I said to Richard, "Is it always like this?"
No.
So it was a complete mind-boggling spectacle for me as a first gig to go to. And then the Nashville Teens came, not the Nashville. Then the Swinging Blue Jeans were on after that, and they didn't go down that well, I have to say. Probably because they hadn't just had a number one.
No, quite.
And then we had to wait a while for Chuck to count his money, because he used to demand to be paid in cash, and he'd count it about 3 times before he went on stage. So we had to wait while that took place, and then we got Chuck Berry, which was mind blowing. So that was the first show that I can remember attending, and I was hooked.
Well, that's strangely enough, we talked about this. We talked to Richard Thompson about this.
Oh, he remembers this show, does he?
He remember. We said, "What's the first show you went to?" And he said, "Chuck Berry."
Yeah.
And we also spoke to Steve Howe of Yes, round about the same time. What was the first show you went to? Chuck Berry as well.
Well,
it was one of those tours, you know.
And also, and he did a couple, I think. There was back two years running. And the thing is, it just shows what an influence he was on modern music. I mean, he was black, but he wasn't a blues. He wasn't. We were used to black people being black musicians being blues musicians, but Chuck wasn't. You know, Chuck was peddling something new. He'd stitched together his own cloth, you know, which was rock and roll, and it was far from the blues. A lot of it was very up in emotional. You know, it wasn't sad. A lot of it was very happy music. Yeah. So he was very special to everybody I knew at the time.
So, as you say, you were in a band with Richard Thompson. This is at school.
Yeah.
This is, what is it, Emil and the Detectives?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you probably know all about this from Richard, yeah.
Well, can you remember what tunes you used to play?
Well, we used to play rhythm and blues, you know, Smokestack Lightning and the odd Chuck Berry song. We did Tobacco Road, which we loved playing. And which has just actually been we just recorded, and it's coming out in an Alzheimer's on an Alzheimer's help album, you know, charity album is coming out.
What Emil and the Detectives are doing this?
Well, Richard and I and the
right,
and the rhythm section of Fairport.
Right.
We did it remotely, you know, and turned out quite well. So we did those, and you know, we weren't writing songs then, so it was just play the songs that you love, you know, and it was a great learning experience. So I played bass at that time. I was a bass player.
So you were. This is North London. So was it quite easy to go to gigs as you were growing up? There were lots of choice, presumably.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then I ventured down to a little bit later. I went down to and discovered the Marquee. You know, I discovered Soho, and I became a regular visitor to the Marquee. I used to go. It was amazing. It was just as good as the Astoria, but it was very small. You know, so you were real close to the people, your idols, you know, your heroes. And I saw loads of people down there. I used to see the Who. I saw the Who there just before they broke. I used to see the Yardbirds regularly, and Mark Lehman 5, and
the Mark Lehman 5,
yeah,
they were good because he died, didn't he? Tragically.
Yeah, and Spencer Davis around the time of Keep On Running, which was great. And what used to happen at the Marquee was that the band would do 2 sets, and after the first set, they'd go to the pub next door. I think it was the Five Posts, or is it the pub that's still there? I think for rather than going in the dressing room, which was probably tiny, so I can understand that. They used to go to the pub, so they'd walk out through the actual front door where we'd all come in. And it was like going through, it's like a wedding, you know, all the punters would be on either side and be patting them on the back and trying to give them good vibes, you know, feedback. So it was very, it was a very great experience, you know. And one time when the Yardbirds were there, they said, and also the Graham Bond Organisation, which was my favourite band because they were so unusual with Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker playing drums and bass. And one time when the Yardbirds played there, Keith Relf, the singer, came up to the mic and said, "Well, we've got something very special here for you tonight because not only have we got Jeff, but Eric's turned up, and Jimmy's here as well. And there was Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and Jeff Beck in a line on stage, trading solos during the Yardbirds set, which was quite special to see that. So it was amazing experiences. But my mum used to go mad when she went mad when she found out I used to go into Soho, and at the age of 15 and 16, and what are you doing down there? You get into trouble down there. Very funny.
So when was your first gig with the Stranglers? Can you remember that?
It was probably in Guildford.
Right.
I think it was a youth club in Guildford, which probably isn't there anymore. But I remember my first gigs with, that wasn't my first gig because, I'd had this experience with Emil and the Detectives, and we used to play regularly at Hornsey Art College, which is local to you.
Yeah.
Because Richard's sister, Perry, was the social secretary, just happened to be the social secretary.
Useful.
And a student at Hornsey College of Art. So she used to get us gigs up there, support slots. And I can't remember who we played with. And also gigs under our own right, student parties and things. We played on a boat at Eel Pie Island once, something that she'd arranged. And our crowning glory was we supported Helen Shapiro at the Golders Green Ionic Cinema Theatre in Golders Green, and that was the pinnacle of our success.
That was what became the BBC Theatre, wasn't it? Is that right?
I have no idea.
I think it did. The Golders Green Ionic, name to conjure with.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, what was your most treasured memory in terms of playing live with the Stranglers?
My treasured memory, I think we did a show which unfortunately ended sadly because it was at Nice University, and the power generator kept breaking down, so there was the lights and all the equipment kept failing. But we managed to do 2 numbers before this happened. And then we went off stage, they fixed it, we came back on and did another 2 numbers, and then it happened again. This happened about 6 times before the gig was called off. But when we were on stage, I couldn't believe how good we sounded. And I'd never really noticed it or thought about it before. But that gig, maybe because the sound acoustics on stage were good enough and I could hear everything properly. But we finished the first number and I thought, my God, that sounded great, And I don't normally have time to reflect things like that. But for some reason, that show, we were sounding so good and I felt very proud. I know pride is a vice, but I felt very proud at that moment. I think that was my finest moment.
So presumably with live performance, there's just so many things you can't quite control. Is that the case?
Absolutely. Yeah. They're different every night, unless you're playing in the same place. Well, even if you're playing in the same place, it can be different show to show, strangely enough. Even though everything's exactly the same place and you're playing exactly the same songs, and because the audience is different. So that makes a change to the whole atmosphere and the experience, of the show changes because the people are different. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can't control, and some nights you do a show. I remember doing shows, and I would come off stage, and John and the others would come on stage, and John and I would say, "Oh, that was a terrible show. It was awful," because we couldn't hear something properly, or something went wrong, and then Jet would turn around and say, "No, that was one of the best ones on this tour." And he said, we said, don't be silly. And he said, no, I'm at the back. I see the whole thing. He said, I see you guys and I see the audience. And he said, and that's a different experience. And he said, that was the one of the best ones we've done on this tour. And I remembered that, it's interesting.
Yeah,
so there
definitely.
you go. Drummers have a different experience.
Well, they do, don't they? They're higher up as well, usually, aren't they? Yeah,
most of the time, yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about this tour you're about to embark on. What are you going to be doing, and what can people look forward to?
Well, it's following up. It's following on from a very recent release of a live double album of mine, which came out, I think, a few days ago, funnily enough. And so we're sticking to the template of that album, but it won't be exactly the same. There are quite a few changes. So it's going to be about 35% Stranglers songs, and then the rest of it is a selection of songs from my back catalogue, my solo back catalogue. Can't touch all the albums. I've got quite a few live albums, quite a few solo albums now to choose from, material. But we visit about six or seven, do a couple of tracks from about 7 albums. And then every couple of songs we throw in a Stranglers nugget,
right?
For people to revel in nostalgia.
do you find you've got to do that?
Well, no, but I like doing it, and it goes down well. And they're my songs, songs that I helped to write or wrote. So they're part of my heritage, and I think a lot of people enjoy seeing me play them. And yet there are other people who say, why do you still play Stranglers songs? We want to hear the new stuff, but you can't please everybody. So I try and reflect my whole career, and especially with a recording. We recorded the last round of shows we did at the beginning of the year. And I knew they were going to be recorded. So I thought, well, what would I like recorded? Well, it would be good to have an overview of everything I've done, So that obviously includes Stranglers, an element of Stranglers material, and we play them in quite a different way, So I don't carry keyboards anymore. That's the point of difference between myself and Stranglers lineups, is that I don't carry keyboards. I used to when I first left, but then I realized that it would be a point of difference if I didn't have keyboards. And I like playing guitar, and I think guitars are the basis of rock and roll. I don't really think keyboards are. Keyboards are brought in by, in the emergence of blues, so Jimmy Smith and people like that. That's when keyboards were brought into rock music, and it's not really the signature of rock and roll, keyboards. It's a late addition. Some people would disagree with me, but that's my opinion. So I like the space that's left with guitars. With guitars and bass and drums, you get spaces in the music, which creates a bit of dynamic and danger. And with keyboards, it's just like pouring a pot of glue over everything.
I know what you mean.
It can be. I mean, the Doors managed to do it quite well, leave spaces, but you got to leave the spaces, because that's where people experience things, is in the spaces.
Right. So, are you looking forward to this tour as much as you look forward to any tour in the past, kind of thing? Is it something you look forward to more now?
These days, I mean, not particularly this one any more than the one in January, or the one that I'm planning. I might do one next year in this country, and I'm planning some tours abroad as well. I enjoy playing at the moment. I've got a great couple of guys that I play with. Windsor and Pat. They're very talented, very young and energetic, and they've got enthusiasm. They love doing it, and I love playing with them. And and they've got two beautiful voices. And whenever we're putting new old Stranglers songs in, or something of mine, they want to know if there's backing vocals, because they love singing. So in a way, that's my keyboards, is the three backing vocals,
Right.
which the Who actually used to great extent in their career. They used the backing vocals as an extra instrument, which you can do. It's I love touring at the moment. It's great.
And do you like the kind of the actual touring bit of it?
No,
the bit, you hate that bit, do you?
No, the traveling and the hotels, all that is awful. But you got to leave. If you're in a hotel, you got to leave the hotel as late as possible on that morning, because you know that as soon as you leave that room, you'll have no time to yourself until you go into the next room.
Right.
And that's it. And so that's what I discovered, because as soon as you go through that door on tour, for the beginning of that day, or that rhymes, doesn't it? On tour, through that door on that tour. As soon as you go through that door, the tour kicks in, and you won't have a moment's peace the whole day. But that's fun in a way. You open the door and go, I wonder what's going to happen today.
Right. But I suppose it's just tiring being with people, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't get. It's tiring. Yeah, it's the whole process is tiring. It's not just being people. I mean, I love the traveling around with the people I travel around with, so they're not tiring me out. It's just the whole thing. It's hard to explain unless you've done it. It really is.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you. Could I get a plug in about my podcast about the cinema? Because I did ask if I could do that.
Of course,
before we finish. I'm passionate about cinema and films, and so I spend a lot of my spare time as an escape. I do a podcast on the cinema, and it's called Mr. DeMille FM, and it's getting slowly more and more views. People are listening to it. It's not a visual thing. It's an auditory thing, audio thing, and it's free, completely free. MrDeMilleFM.com, and there's shows about people's careers, actors, actresses, directors, people who write music in films. And sometimes I get the chance to do an interview with somebody who I ran into, and they agreed to do an interview with me. And I just did one with David Arnold, who is very well known for his work with the Bond films.
Yes, quite.
And so he sat down with me, and we did a nice interview about his favorite films, and we play a bit of music from the films that we choose. And and if it's a program about someone's career, then I'll pick a bit of music from one of their films, that they've worked on. So it's quite nice.
So what's your favorite film?
My favorite film? Well, this week, what's my favorite film this week? Because there are so many, and I keep discovering. It's like Pandora's box, isn't it? The film world, you keep discovering new things. And I think my favorite film this week is a film I saw last week, which was by Robert Hossein, a French Algerian actor director, called Death of a Killer. And it's a French gangster film about a guy who comes out of jail and tries to get hold of some money that from a robbery that he's just on time for. And it's set around Marseille. It's fabulous. And the music's great too. It's a really good film.
We'll look out for that, and also Mr. DeMille FM, your podcast. Yeah. And Hugh Cornwell will maybe amongst you quite soon, maybe playing in your town quite soon. We'll put full details.
I'll try to.
With this. All right. Nice to talk to you, Hugh.
Word down your way. You're such a lovely audience.